switch. How about now? Can you guys tell me? Are you now seeing my screen, which should say yes? Awesome. Okay, awesome. Perfect. Superb. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so I know most of you guys know that are live right now. No, okay, awesome. Thank you, Lacey. That helps me to know what you guys are seeing. I know most of you guys on live right now, I know through Periscope and whatnot, but I'm going to give myself a quick intro for those that watch the replay and that don't know who I am, that just found this because you guys have been awesome to share the news about this webinar. So, who am I? My name is Missy Ballison. I've been a personal trainer for 25 years, and these are the things I do. So I made this really simple, and we're going to just zip through it. I'm a personal trainer in my own personal studio that my awesome husband built for me on our property here in Sandpoint, Idaho, and I train online. I have the Trainer on Tap membership site. Many of you guys are members of that, and that is a place where my people that I touch base with online can go and get just a little more direction and guidance. We're going through a 90-day program right now. They have an exercise library, there's education. This and all other webinars I do will live forever on the Trainer on Tap membership site so that the people that belong to that membership site can go and check it out when, sometimes what do we call just-in-time learning? Sometimes you are ready to hear something, and sometimes it just kind of swirls in the back end. So you're like, that's a neat piece of knowledge, but I'm not quite ready for it. That's why I want to save the webinars and put it on the membership site so that you guys can kind of learn when you're ready. Sometimes it just swirls back in there, and then one day you go, oh yeah, that one thing about labels, and I want to go check that out. Okay, so I also have online group coaching programs called the Real Health Reset. I used to be an Ironman triathlete and a marathoner for a lot of years, like 20 years or something. I am CEO of the Ballison Corporation, which means I'm the mother of 3 awesome kids and a wife to a sweet old husband. Well, he's not that old, but pretty awesome husband whose claim to fame is that he can pull the plank for 8 minutes. And I would love to say that I trained him how to do that, but that is not the case. He just born that way. Someday I'm going to get him in better shape and I'll be able to claim it. I don't know if that's possible, but the things that I know about, like, why do you even want to listen to me? I have a bachelor's in exercise physiology from St. Mary's College of California. I'm an ACE medical exercise specialist, which basically just means I'm a personal trainer, I guess, a notch above, meaning that I am certified to work with special populations, people with diabetes, chronic pain, a host of things, hypertension, all of the basic medical issues that you go to the doctor with, cholesterol, all these different situations, autoimmune disease, things like that. So I'm also a behavior change specialist, a licensed massage therapist, and I just last week, I'm super excited for this. Just sorry about that beep right there. I have got to turn off this little notification here. I just started a nutrition class that I'm really excited for because I love to teach about nutrition, but I feel it's important to have the actual certification to back it up. And this is a graduate level nutrition program. So it'll take me about 6 months to get through, but it will be awesome. So very excited to be able to offer that in a more organized way than I currently do. Okay, so that's enough. Let's get on with it. Okay, so why do you need to read labels? Please let me know in the comments if I am rushing because there's a lot of information here and I want to make sure I get through it to you because I know you guys are busy. So let me know if I'm rushing and I will try to slow myself down. So today, what I want you to learn and what I want you to get out of this webinar is I want you to learn to be a label sleuth, which means I want you to get in the habit of checking out labels and not just grabbing something off the shelf because the packaging looks like it's natural or it might be good for you. I want to teach you how to choose snacks that are going to keep your blood sugar balanced. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the FDA and its, I didn't finish this slide, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the FDA and its regulations for, what it takes to have food on these food labels, or, how they mark our food labels. That's really important to know. Sorry about that. Let me get rid of that thing. That's very important to know. because a lot of times what we see on the package isn't necessarily what we think we're buying. I also want to teach you how to pronounce and define some of the weird words that are in the ingredients list on your labels. Now, of course, we can't go through every single ingredient, but I picked some of the ones that we see quite often and that we go, what in the world is that? And we continue eating it, not even really knowing what it is and what it can do to our bodies. So will somebody just put a quick little yes in the comments for me, just to make sure you guys can still hear me and still see my screen? I just want to make sure that you good. Okay. I just want it was quiet there. Thanks, you guys. And you are fast with the thumbs. Awesome. Okay. So here is a little fun fact for you. 2002, less than 50% of people read the labels. And in 2016, roughly 77% of American adults claim to read labels when buying food. So tell me in the chat if you are a label reader currently. I would love to know that. Do you currently read labels, or are you here today to, heck yes, are you here today to, you're becoming one? Good. That is excellent. And yes, but had to learn it first. Right. It takes me 2 hours to shop. Oh, Misty, let's see if we can, awesome. Okay, yes, but I don't know what they mean. Perfect. I'm so happy to hear that, kind of, because hopefully today you're going to get a lot of clarity on that. So if 77% of American adults are reading the labels, but we don't know what we're looking for, that's hopeful, because that's a lot of people that are at least interested in knowing what's going on inside that package, but we just need to clarify for you what it is. So let's get started. We're going to jump right in to the anatomy of a food label. Okay. Tell me if you could, you guys, can you guys see my pointer on the screen moving around, or are you just simply seeing my screen? Yes. Okay, perfect. Because I'm going to point good. I'm going to point at some certain things for you. And so that you guys can kind of guide along. So look at my little pointer. We are going to just kind of go through all of these checkpoints here that you can see. I'm going to go in detail into these things, and notice that there's different areas of color. So we're going to see this throughout. I've just zoomed in on the food label here. So this is basically anytime you turn over a package, this is what you're going to see. Okay, so we're going to move on here. We're going to start right up here. Sorry, up here at the serving size. This is probably one of the most important things for you to understand. Now, I chose a label of macaroni and cheese. Not that I'm a fan of macaroni and cheese by any means, but I'm sorry, I need to turn off all these notifications. I hate to do that right in the middle of our little broadcast here, though. Let me see if I can do that from here. I think I can. I'm going to turn off some of this stuff. All right. Let me just shut this all down. Close it all. Okay. Okay. So here is the deal. It's super, super important for you to be looking at the serving size. In this macaroni and cheese, for example, I want you to picture a 1 cup measuring cup. In this serving of macaroni and cheese, 1 cup is the serving size, but the entire box is 2 servings. Okay. So anytime you change the serving size, you need to remember to change the other information on the label as well. So the rest of the information on this label that we're going to get into is only going to show you the ingredients or the quantities of 1 cup. All right. Unfortunately, often the serving size listed is much less than an average person would eat in a sitting. So consider this. How many of you, when you sit down to have a sweet little cup of ice cream, how many of you actually have a half a cup of ice cream? Anyone? Anyone? I'm pretty sure we're going to get a bunch of no's here, because nobody eats a half a cup of ice cream. If you do, I am proud of you. Yeah, that is not happening. I mean, even a cup of ice cream, if you think about a cup, yeah, more like 3 cups. Misty. Oh, okay. Well, that I know it's painful. Vic had a great question. Why are serving sizes so unbelievably small? It's all because of the marketing, because the marketers know that we are looking at the labels and that we are trying to determine what's the best, I think that marketers believe the first thing we go to, and I think that they're correct, is usually the calories. People want to know how many calories. And the reason for that is because for so many years, we were taught that it's all about calories in, calories out. On another webinar, we're going to talk about why that's not the case, but I'm going to switch to our next slide here, which shows calories here. Marketers know that we go first thing for the calories, typically, most people. So the calories shown on the label are depicting the amount of calories for each serving, not the entire box, and not the serving that you wish it was. It's the serving size that's noted up here, 1 cup. All right. And the reason that the serving sizes are so small is because they know that's going to sell. It's not like it's a sustainable serving size typically, but that's what's going to sell the package. So they figure as long as somebody looks at the calories and they're like, oh yeah, 250 calories, that's not a big deal. They're holding the entire box of mac and cheese thinking, oh, not a big deal, 250 calories, not even thinking about the fact that it's only 1 cup. All right. So that's really why it is so important to understand what the actual serving size is. And usually what you'll find is the calories are just not worth it. So the 250 calories for that 1 cup of mac and cheese, just not worth it. So you have to consider, okay, will I eat just that mac and cheese, that 1 cup? Is that really going to satisfy me? Now, I'm sad we're talking about mac and cheese, but it was a really good example, and this label was colorful, so that worked out. So, but you have to think about the fact that that mac and cheese, 1 cup, is probably not going to satisfy you, maybe as a snack, but not for a meal. So when you are food logging, if you're using like a MyFitnessPal or an app like that, you want to make sure that you are logging in the correct amount that you're eating. Okay. So looking down, we're going to go down to calories from fat. So I've put these arrows here to kind of help you understand what we're looking at. So we see that 1 cup is worth 250 calories. And if we roll over here, we can see that the calories in this product that come from fat are 110 calories. So that is the number of total calories that are in a product that's coming directly from fat. So this mac and cheese has a total calories of 250, 110 of these come from fat. So that means that about almost half of the calories are coming from fat. So maybe like 45% of this product is coming from fat. I like to kind of visualize that a little bit. I kind of look at my 1 cup measuring cup, and in my head, I picture my little metal measuring cup that I have in my drawer at home. And then I picture it filled with mac and cheese. And then I kind of like half that in my mind. And I have half of that pictured as actual mac and cheese, and the other half is like a little wad of lard. So a lot of times that distracts me from even buying a product when I think of it like that, especially when it's not a quality fat, which we are going to get into a little bit further down on the slides here. Okay. So moving on, fat stats. Let's talk a little bit about fat. So I'm looking over here in this yellow section. It all breaks it down. So total fat refers to the number of fat grams in 1 serving. So in 1 cup of this mac and cheese, there are 12 grams of fat. Okay. Then it breaks it down a little further, and it tells us about saturated fats and about trans fats, which we have a whole other slide on trans fats. So I'll get to that in just a moment. But so saturated fats are fats that are found in meat, seafood, dairy products like cheese, milk, and ice cream, poultry skin, and egg yolks. Now, most of those things that I listed are natural foods. They walked on the ground, or swam in the sea, or came out of a chicken that walked on the ground, right? So we have become very fat phobic, especially saturated fat phobic. So I want you to notice, we'll talk about this a little more in detail later, but I want you to notice that these saturated fats typically are found in real food products. Okay. The problem with the fats, we're going to, again, go into the good fats and the bad fats in a little bit here, but the problem here on this particular label is the trans fats. And you won't see trans fats on every label, but that's why I chose this particular label, because it does. So trans fats are mostly found in commercial baked goods, your margarine, so your fake butter, snacks, and processed foods, so fried foods like French fries. They also contain quite a bit of trans fats, and that is because they are using poor oil sources. All right. So we're going to talk about those in a little bit here, but just note that the difference between these saturated fats that are coming from typically real food products and then the trans fats, I'm going to discuss with you how a trans fat is created, but the trans fats are coming from poor sources of fat. Okay. So take note of that. So here's the skinny on fat. You like that? That's a good little fitness pun for you. So the good fats, I just easily listed these out for you, hopefully easily. So good fats, these are quality fats that are nourishing to the body. So we need fats. I'm not going to go into tons of detail on this webinar about what fats do, but I do want you to know that fats are what create our, thank you, Misty. Fats are what create our hormones. Hormones are messengers in our body. They take every message to every cell to tell those cells what to do. So if you can imagine that we cut out all of these fats and we're on this super low fat diet, I'm referring like to about the late 80s, early 90s when we went through this fat-free craze, you can see that our hormones are going to be lacking. They are made of fats. And if we cut off these healthy fats, we don't have the proper hormones to send the proper messages to any of the 30 trillion cells that your body is made up of so those cells can know what to do. So I hope that sinks in as very important. That's a really important function of the body because that's a lot of cells and they have to get the right messages. So our good fats are coconut oil and its products. So coconut milk, coconut flakes, just, eating coconut oil. Those are great. That's a great source of fat. Avocado oil, and avocados, olive oil, flaxseed, fatty fishes such as salmon, mackerel, sardines, and then actual real butter. So not the fake margarines, the real butter made with milk. Okay. So one thing to note about the good fats, I have to throw this in, that the olive oil should be always used cold. It should not really be used as an oil to cook with. Okay, that's because at high temperatures, while olive oil is very healthy, it's great for your heart and your brain, and all the other things fats are great for skin and all of this. It's when heated to a high temperature, it becomes, it changes its chemical structure and it becomes not so great for us. It creates free radicals, which are free radicals. Basically, you can call these cancer agents that would not cause cancer necessarily, but allow cancer to live. Okay. So olive oil should always be used cold. The two oils that you want to use heated at high temperatures would be coconut and avocado oil. Okay. So those are your go-to oils for cooking. All right. Then we have the bad fats on the right side. And this is Lacey, I'm sorry. Lacey, this is why I was thinking of you, because as I was listing out my bad fats, I was like, I put sunflower in there and I'm like, oh no, that's not a bad one. So we have canola oil, safflower, vegetable oils, soybean oil, corn oil, and margarine. And the reason that these oils are not great oils are because, let me get rid of these, sorry, you guys, are because they are highly refined. They a lot of times are like squeezed out of a seed, and they're highly refined so that when you think of these oils on the shelf at your grocery store, they're yellow, they're perfectly clear, they look just right to the eye. But when they squeezed them out of the seed, they didn't look so good. They were cloudy and all of that, and they might have been fine, but they've been so highly refined. Let's see, Missy has a question. Could you consider cheap butter, not organic, a bad fat due to the additives and hormones of the cow? That's a good question. I did a Periscope today on good, better, and best. And or a Facebook Live, I think it was both Periscope and Facebook Live. Check that out, Misty, because that is one of those situations where, let's say your budget, ideally you would want grass-fed butter. If your budget doesn't allow, yes, you are buying real butter that's not organic, and you probably are going to get some of those hormones and things, but it would be much better than having margarine. So it's that good, better, best scenario, because sometimes when I'm talking to people about how to shop and I say, you have to buy organic this and organic that, it's overwhelming. And they're like, I can't do that. I can't afford that. But what I find is when people start dabbling in buying organics and good quality food, and they start getting this desire to eat well and their body feels awesome, then they take the next step. And they're like, okay, I'm going to make that jump. Now that my budget is used to buying these foods, I'm going to make that jump to organic butter. But that's a really good point. So the reason I would call these oils bad oils is because they are highly refined, and they usually come from very cheap sources. When you think about corn, the last time you squeezed a piece of corn, did oil come out? No, probably not. So there's a lot of things that has to happen to that process to make an oil about it. So just keeping in mind that we want to stick with these better fats. Now let's jump into trans fats, because where is it? There we go. Because this is a large part of the problem when we're reading about fat on the label. So trans fats are created when liquid vegetable oils are what we call partially hydrogenated. So that means that they blasted hydrogen atoms into them, turning them into a semi-solid fat so that they can live at shelf temperature, or they can live at a longer shelf life. Okay. So it's just a process, one more step in the processing process, so that a real food now becomes a little more processed. And then in that process, let's take a vegetable oil. Let's take soybean. So we squeeze a soybean and we get some liquid out of it. And then they want to make that soybean last longer on the shelf, so they blast it with hydrogen. So that's another step. And then it's a little cloudy, so they want to refine it. So they put it through this big process of, and it's a huge process. I believe it's like a 10 to 12 step process of refining. So that one natural bean that grew out of the ground has gone through so much processing, but by the time it hits the bottle and it looks great on the shelf, it's not really what it was intended to be when it grew out of the ground. All right. Plus the fact that hydrogenating it, you'll see sometimes hydrogenated oil or partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. That's what it is they took a liquid and they treated it to make it into a solid so that it can either hold a certain consistency in that product. Like think of an Oreo maybe. Think of an Oreo cookie in that center filling. They needed to get created in a way that would kind of hold that creamy filling and not be like a liquid running all over the package. Okay. So, and they need it to be palatable to the mouth and smell and sight and all of that. So there's a lot of things that go into the food to get them on the shelf so that we will actually want to buy them. All right. So the problem with trans fats is that there is definitely an increased risk of heart attack, strokes, diabetes, and all kinds of other diseases that are coming from inflammation that is caused by these cheap oils. All right. So that's one thing that I want you to be looking at in your packaging are these cheap oils. And really, like you could take 2 bags of potato chips. You go to the health food section and all of a sudden I dropped the brand off the top of my head. I bought a brand. I actually bought a brand for my kids of one of those. It's called Early July. Early July or June, I don't know, some spring, summer month. And I thought I recall buying this product before, thinking it was made with quality oils. When I got it home, I don't recall right off the top of my head. I think it had safflower oil in it. It would be best to choose. There's like 2 brands out there that have olive oil as their main oil. I would go with those. Okay, so that's one thing I want you to be looking for is the oils that are in the ingredients labels, which we're going to dig into ingredients labels here in a little bit. All right, moving on. Let's talk a little bit. Oh gosh, sorry, I kind of messed up the slide here. Let's talk a little bit more about trans fats here while I move my slides around and make them pretty for you. So here's the deal with trans fats. Now I want to let you know that there are new labeling laws coming out, which is cool. And we're going to dig into those a little bit, but they aren't due out till 2018. But some of these trans fat things are going to come to light and when these laws come into effect. But so here's the bummer is that the FDA has allowed labels to list trans fat as 0, even if the food contains less than 0.5 grams per serving. All right. So the problem, I know that doesn't sound like much. You're like, oh, it's just a half a gram. What's the big deal? But this can really add up. Like if you are eating more than 1 serving, for example, ice cream. If ice cream is a half a cup serving, and let's say Misty is eating 3 cups of ice cream, then she is going to be having, what is that? 6. Did I just do the bad math? So she's having actually 6 times more than the serving. So that means she's going to get 3 grams of the trans fats in a serving. Okay. So that can add up quite a bit. And that's just one food. So if you are adding up, marshmallow topping, if you are adding those up throughout the day, you can end up getting quite a bit extra trans fat. So when we take into consideration that the labels, the serving sizes are not always on target with what we would normally eat, and the fact that trans fats are hidden in small traces, it can add up throughout the course of the day. So you really want to be watching that. But there is going to be the trans fat ban will be in full effect in 2018. So for now, you want to really watch out for partially hydrogenated oils in the ingredients list, because that's what's going to, even if it says trans fats 0 on the label, if it says partially hydrogenated oils anywhere in that list of ingredients, you can be sure that there are trans fats in there. Now, it's hard to avoid trans fats altogether, but if you do your best to stay away from processed foods and fried foods, you're going to do a lot to be stepping away. So Again, you guys know, let me just remind those of you that don't know that I preach eating whole, real foods whenever possible. Sometimes it's not totally possible. That's why we're looking at these labels today. But just keep in mind that I don't want you to take this class and then be like, oh, I can eat whatever label I want. I really want you to stick to whole, real food that grew out of the ground or had eyeballs or walked along the ground at one time. Okay. The FDA has made a decision to remove partially hydrogenated vegetable oils from its list of what they call generally recognized as safe. So you might have seen this as an acronym, GRAS. Now that's a strange term when you think of it. In general, these are safe. That leaves a lot of room for unsafe. I don't know what that exactly means, but somebody does, and they paid a lot of money to have it put on the generally recognized as safe list. That's all I'm going to say. But the cool thing is that in 2008, manufacturers are going to have to remove these oils from their products. We're going to go into the new things you're going to see on new labels too. So you're going to be like ahead of the game. Not only are you going to be able to read labels today after this webinar, you're going to be able to read labels in 2008. So that's good stuff. Okay, moving on. This is one that probably baffles a lot of people. The percent daily value. Okay, over here in the purple, you can see where it says percent daily value. Now, of course, this label is color coded, which makes it easy to read. On your labels at the store, it's all going to be white. So you're just going to have to look a little more closely for these things. But the percent daily value, this is important, is based on a person eating a 2,000 calorie diet. All right. Now, I know that I'm eating between 16 and 1,800 calorie diet. I did some little write-up on some calories and proteins, carbs, and fats for somebody the other day. This is a man that weighs what does he weigh? He weighs, is it 380 pounds? I think he weighs. And off the top of my head, I believe his numbers fell in the range of like, he needs to be eating 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day. Okay. So when you look at somebody that has a much higher calorie requirement than 2,000 calories, then these label percentages are not that ideal. So you might be thinking, oh, okay, let's look over here at fat. Okay, so if I'm looking at the fat, it says 12 grams. Over here it says, okay, well that would be 18% of my daily requirements, but only if you're somebody that's eating 2,000 calories a day. Let's just say fat was something we wanted in our diet, just looking at this picture. So the man that takes in 3,500 calories a day just to support his being, this is going to be out of whack, right? It's going to be too low for him. For somebody like myself that's eating less than 2,000 calories a day, it's going to be too high for me, okay? So in general, this right here is the part I want you to remember. You might want to jot this part down, okay, where it says here 5% or less. So in general, when you're looking at percent daily values, if the number here is 5% or less, then that falls into the low range for that particular food, okay? So for example here, this falls at 18%. So according to our little chart over here, it's in the moderate range. If that food says between 5 and 20%, that's moderate figures. And then if it says 20% or more, that's pretty high. So when you think about this, this is getting pretty close. If this is in the moderate range for fat, for example, because it falls between 5 and 20%, but it's pretty close to the high range also, right? If you're looking at the cholesterol down here, for example, it falls into the moderate range as far as the cholesterol that it provides. Okay, so does everybody understand that? That's what the percent daily value is, but it can be very misleading because it's based on all labels. It's based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So if you consider you're looking at these labels for your kids, not very ideal because most kids, I don't know, most kids probably aren't going to eat 2,000 calories, hopefully, because their bodies are smaller and they don't need as much food. However, their metabolism is a lot faster. So it depends on the child, but keeping in mind that that these can be skewed if you're, you gotta, let's say I'm eating 4,000 calories a day, I would need to double this figure, right? Okay. Or technically, I'm sorry, if I was eating 4,000 calories a day, I would actually need to half that figure. So for me, that would be 9% of my daily intake of fat if I was eating 4,000 calories a day. Okay. All right. I hope that makes sense to y'all. because that one's the most confusing. All right, let's go to fats. Trans fats. Well, we talked about this a little bit. Trans fats are made during partial hydrogenation of vegetable oil. So basically the water's removed, the solid is in, has been added, and trans fats are included in the total fat on your label. All right. So of these 12 grams of fat on this label, 3 of them come from trans fats. All right. So, and notice right here, I want you to notice right here, there is no percentage there. So that is, this is going to be leaving because trans fats are not going to be allowed in foods, but there really is no recommendation for percent of trans fats that we should be getting in, because we really shouldn't be getting any of in. So notice that they just had to leave that one blank. Okay, let's go. Carbohydrates. Now, let me emphasize that proteins, fats, and carbohydrates are what we call macros. So if you ever hear somebody saying, oh, what are your macros? Are you counting macros? That means, are you keeping track of your proteins, carbs, and fats? And by looking at labels, this is one way you can. It's a good idea, and that'll be another webinar. It's a good idea to know what you're taking in regards to proteins, carbs, and fats if fat loss is one of your goals. All right. So carbs, now we have become a little bit carb phobic these days because we went through, we've got this whole, which isn't such a bad thing, but we don't want to be, carbs are what provide our body with energy. So we don't want to whack out the carbs altogether. We just want to be sensible about which carbs we eat. All right. So they will give your body a boost of energy faster than protein or fat does. So they definitely serve that purpose if you're somebody that needs lots of energy and lots of energy quick. But if you're somebody that's sitting around most of the day, you don't need a whole lot of carbs, because you're going to be able to get a lot of carbs from your vegetables, which you should be eating plenty of. But again, that's a whole other webinar, but I just want you to kind of have some relationship with why we're even looking at carbohydrates. So on your label, the carbs also include the sugars. The sugars are included in these carbs. So on this label, we have 31 grams of carbohydrates. Of those 31 grams, 5 grams come from sugar. Okay. So does that make sense? Somebody give me a yes. Unfortunately, this label has no fiber, which we'll talk about in a minute though. So the carb given on the label under total carbohydrates also includes the sugar. Good deal. I like that you check in. I hope you're taking notes. Okay. So note that this is where you're going to find the carbohydrates of the sugar. One thing, I'm going to give you a little more detail on this later too, but one thing I do when I'm looking for a healthy snack is I am trying to make sure I'm going to look at total carbs, fiber, and protein. And typically what I'm trying to find on a snack is the protein and the carbs way out of whack? Because ideally you want these pretty close in balance. And the reason we want that is because we want to keep your blood sugar level. If the carbs are way too high and there's not a lot of fiber, so when we eat a food that has high carbohydrates, but yet it has a lot of fiber, we're going to get more into this too in a minute. The fiber is what slows those carbohydrates down from turning to sugar in the bloodstream. In this particular case, this is quite a bit of carbohydrates per serving, 1 cup serving. I would say per meal, if fat loss is your goal, you want to keep your carbohydrates, and you're an average, moderately active person, maybe even sedentary, you want to keep your carbs per meal about 25 grams. So 1 cup of this mac and cheese, which is probably not even the entire meal, is providing us with 31 grams of carbohydrates. That's quite a bit. It has no fiber to slow the rate at which those carbohydrates turn to sugar in the bloodstream. And if I'm sitting all day and I eat this meal, my blood sugar is going to shoot way up and then it's going to come way down. Okay. So that's one thing to be looking for on your labels. Also, this is pretty out of balance when it comes to, this is high carbs, not a lot of protein. In each meal, you want about 20 grams of protein. So in your snacks, you're going to be looking for somewhere between maybe 10 and 15 grams of protein in your snacks. And at each meal, about 20, maybe 25. If you're a larger man, maybe even 30 grams of protein. And I'm telling you that not to get so much into the macros, but just so that you know when you're looking at labels, how to make that comparison of, oh, this is totally out of whack. So when I go look at like a Greek yogurt label, I'm always looking at the carbohydrates, of course, and the sugar, and then the protein. And if I can find one that's like, oh, okay, well, that has about 16 grams of protein, and the carbs are running around 20, 23, that's a lot closer. And then, the sugars, I like to keep the sugars under 8 grams. So that's just one example of a snack I might be looking at, but I want the protein and the carbs to be a lot closer than this label. So hopefully that makes sense to you. You might find something that's like, well, it's 25 grams of carbs and 20 grams of protein. That's going to be pretty good at keeping me balanced. It's not going to shoot up and shoot way down. All right. So moving on, sodium. We're going to get back into the fiber and the carbs in just a little bit here, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the sodium. So the sodium tells us how much salt is in your food. The typical adult wants to aim for less than 2,400 milligrams of sodium per day. So on your label, often we're going to see grams, but when it comes to cholesterol and sodium, our numbers are given to us in milligrams. So we're looking to keep our daily intake below 2,400 milligrams of sodium per day. So as you're going through this, I'm challenging you at the end of this to go just check out all the labels you can in your house and see where the sodium and all these different things lie. And your homework is going to be I'll be checking with you on an email, but your homework is to be checking in on these things and just exploring them and seeing how they balance and finding out which could be your potential go-to foods or snacks. All right. So if our aim is 2,400 milligrams of sodium per day, that's kind of a large number for us to like calculate in our head. So assuming that you're eating 4 meals a day, most of my clients eat 4 meals a day. Or maybe 3 meals and a snack or something. So that's less than 600 milligrams per meal that you want to shoot for. So just to give you a frame of reference. So weirdly, this mac and cheese falls into that category. Typically, mac and cheese tastes pretty salty, so I'm kind of surprised it actually came in this low. But according to this label, that's where we're at for 1 cup of mac and cheese. All right. So that's what I like to do with my carbs, proteins, and fats is break it down. If I say, okay, Misty, you need to eat 100 grams of carbs a day, that's kind of a lot to like process through. So I break it down into the meals. So that means if I'm eating 4 meals a day, breaking that down into 25 grams a meal, that's a lot easier to process. So do the same with your nutrition labels, kind of break it down. All right, moving on, cholesterol. So cholesterol, there's a lot of miscommunication about cholesterol also. It's always been seen as a bad guy, but cholesterol is required for hormone production. And remember, we talked about hormones send the messages to the cell. If we don't have cholesterol to create the hormones, we are so out of whack. So we really need to be careful about not being too phobic of quality cholesterol, okay? They're transporters of fat as well. So it's required for digesting dietary fats, making hormones, and building strong cell walls. So this is like the foundation of our little human person. So we have to be very careful about not trying to get the cholesterol so low that our body can't perform these functions. Cholesterol is found in animal-based products and real foods like meat and dairy products, all right? So often those meat and dairy products will be found in your packaged processed foods as well, but you're going to find cholesterol, and the best form of cholesterol is going to be in natural sources. Like I said, had eyes on it or it came out of the ground. So 5% of daily value, I'm going to go over here and point to you at the purple area here. This is daily value. Somebody just came in the room. So this is your percentage of daily value section. 5% daily value or less of cholesterol is low. 20% daily value or more cholesterol is considered high. So this particular product is considered kind of right there in the middle when it comes to cholesterol. Okay. So that kind of goes back along with our little chart that we had up here when we were talking about, here's that, for the person that just came in the room, here's the percent daily value area. And then when those figures fall into this 5% or less is low, 20% or more is high, somewhere in the range is moderate for that mineral or macro. All right. So let's go back to our cholesterol. So just so you know, because we'll look at these labels and we'll be like, well, I don't even know what 30 milligrams of cholesterol even means. Well, that's what this part is for, this purple area, the percent daily value. That's to kind of tell you high, medium, low. So just remember 5% or less or low, 5 to 20% moderate, 20% or more is high. That's fairly easy to remember, I hope, for you. Otherwise, I would ask them to change it, but I don't think they'd listen to me. Okay, fiber. I love fiber. All right. Look how colorful this label is. All right. So fiber is so valuable and so under ingested. So did you know that women need 25 grams of fiber per day? I want you to write on your little note paper, if you're a man or a woman, write and circle or star 25 grams of fiber a day for women, 35 grams of fiber a day for men. And then I want you to label or to track that, like in your MyFitnessPal app or your Spark People app, or what else, your Fitbit app. Really enforces the idea that it's better to eat real food. Yes, that's not in a package. Good point, Misty. Misty says it's way too complicated looking at these labels. So just eat real food. That's called the JERF diet. Did you guys know that? The JERF, just eat real food. That's why when people ask me what to eat, it really is very simple. Eat real food. And then we talk about portions. But so I want you to write down and circle, whether you're a man or a woman, the 25 grams a day for women, 35 grams a day for men. If you use a food tracker, I have a challenge for you. I want you to star all the challenges. I want you to track and see how you're doing with fiber, because most people are extremely low in fiber. And the reason what fiber does is it's the part of the food that can't be broken down. So it's the bulk of the food. So bulk meaning that it's the roughage. We call it roughage, meaning it doesn't just churn real easy. It's harder to digest. As it's going through your system, it's grabbing fats along the way and taking them out. Fiber is what keeps your cholesterol levels in balance, because it's grabbing the fats and taking them out of the bloodstream. Fiber also will keep you fuller longer. So if you're somebody that's like, oh, I've been trying to diet and I'm just starving all the time, throw a bunch of vegetables in there, and that takes care of a lot of the problem, because fiber takes a lot longer to digest and it will keep you satiated much longer. So there's a little fat loss tip for you. It also, this is key too, another little fat loss tip here, is it slows down the rate at which carbs break down to sugar in the bloodstream. We talked before, when carbs are in the bloodstream, the sugar shoots up and then we go crashing down, and then we're like noshing on whatever we can get. When you balance those carbohydrates with some fiber, or eat high fiber carbohydrates such as vegetables, because vegetables are all considered carbohydrates. They're your go-to source. They break down real slowly. They're called slow carbs, okay? So really, when it comes, you could get, it is argued, and it's very valid, that most people can get all the carbohydrates they need from vegetable sources, unless possibly you're somebody that's an endurance athlete, or you're a firefighter, or you're like a Forest Service guy that is just hiking and sweating and doing tons of activity in a day. But it's arguable that you could get all the carbohydrates you need from vegetable sources, which have so much fiber. So again, 5% daily value or less means it's low in fiber. Let's look at our label here. This one falls in at 12. It's got 3 grams of fiber and it falls in at 12. That's mostly coming from the pasta, the grains in the pasta. If it's 20%, if this here says 20% or more, then you can consider it a high fiber, okay? And in general, you want 14 grams of fiber for every 1,000 calories of your diet. Okay, so if I'm a 2,000 calorie diet eater, that puts me around 28 grams of fiber a day. If I'm a larger individual and I am eating 3,000 calories a day, there's another 14 grams. Okay, so that kind of gives you a measure so that you can, these labels, of course, are figured on a 2,000 calorie diet. So you can use these, see down here where it says here, percent daily values based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So, and they do at least explain that your values may be higher or lower depending on your needs, but that's what I'm explaining to you there, because they don't have enough room to explain that. But do give a little chart here. It says, just kind of showing you, they give you I just noticed this, they give you the 2,000 calories and the 2,500 calories, and then, stepping it up. So I think that's a good thing about labels. You can tell I'm not a huge fan of labels because a lot of it is marketing, but this is good. I'm happy with that, just so you know. Okay, so net carbs. You're not going to see net carbs on many packages. I don't want to get into too much detail on this webinar about net carbs, but I just want you to understand what it is, because some packages you will see it. And here's the story, is that the FDA has not technically defined the terms of net carbs, but basically what it is that fiber, got a question here. What about the hormones that women suffer when all their fat cells duplicate to keep I just missed that question. I'll have to go back to the list. I'm sorry, it popped off my screen. Okay, so fiber reduces the net effect of carbohydrates in a food. So that, let me get that question. Let me grab that question at the end so that I can focus on it. Okay. Um, so fiber reduces the net effect of carbohydrates in food. All right, which means that it slows again it affects the fiber slows the rate at which carbohydrates turn to sugar in the bloodstream. That's all that means. And when you see net carbs on a label, that just means that they're honestly what that means is that there are companies like Atkins that kind of function on this net carbohydrate. They say, oh, well, it has 30 grams of carbs, but it has 20 grams of protein. So technically, it's only 10 grams of carbs. So that's one way. 50 grams of carbs a day. That is a good question. The question is it true we only need 50 grams of carbs a day? That depends on the person. And I'm going to get into a little more detail on that in the end too. Okay. So because that might be a whole other webinar we can do. Okay. So here's the deal. Another way you might see net carbs or think of net carbs is impact carbohydrates. How do those carbohydrates impact your blood sugar? Think of it in terms of that, or digestible carbohydrates. All right. The FDA hasn't defined those terms, but certain companies use those terms to kind of explain their products. All right. Labeling laws allow companies to include sugar alcohols on the label. Okay, listen to this closely. Labeling companies or labeling laws allow companies to include sugar alcohols on a label as fiber. All right. But they are really not fiber. All right. Unfortunately, the labeling laws allow for this. So if you are trying to calculate net carbohydrates, which means what's the true value of those carbs, you're going to take the total carbs. So on this package, the total carbs is, I know, let me see, that is silly. It's crazy. But that's going to change with the new labeling laws too. So that's good. So total carbs in this mac and cheese label, I have to laugh when I say mac and cheese because it just doesn't come out. It doesn't roll off my tongue easily. So total carbs is 13 grams minus the dietary fiber that's right here on our label leaves us with 10 grams. All right. And well, that's what's coming up with the new laws. Trans fat's illegal in America. It's coming up. Okay. So that leaves us with 10 grams. That would be our net carbohydrates. All right. So that would be impact rather than have the impact of 13 grams of carbohydrates. This product, because of its 3 grams of fiber, only has the impact of 10 grams of carbohydrates. And there's some validity to that. Okay, for sure. Now, if there were sugar alcohols in this, they would also be subtracted here. And we would get our net carbs of 10 grams. So net carbs, sometimes you'll see them on a package, but basically that just tells you, is this a fast carb? Is this carb going to turn to sugar fast in my body or slow in my body? Okay, so the lower the net carb number or the carb number in general, the slower it's going to turn to sugar in my body. The more fiber there is, the better off I am. Okay, so moving on. Now, it's hard for me to stick just to labels because there's so much I want to teach you about how that body works, but we will certainly do other webinars about that. So I don't mean to dismiss those concepts, but just to stick with the label fact for now, I'll touch on those. And then I'm happy if you guys have other webinar topics you want, by all means, I want you to put them in the notes because I'm happy to do those. All right, so here's your healthy snack tip. How do I figure out with all these, like if I'm searching for a protein bar, how do I know what is going to be a good option? When shopping for snacks, you want to look at the carbohydrate to fiber ratio. And I talked to you a little bit earlier about the carbohydrate to protein ratio too. You want to get the protein and the carbohydrates pretty close. I like to, like if I'm shopping for a protein bar, because I don't really promote them all the time, but everyone's like, I was traveling last week and needed to find some food in case I couldn't get real food. So I would rather eat a protein bar than go 7 or 8 hours without eating and then find myself eating all the wrong things, right? So it's that good, better, best scenario again. So you want to look at a close ratio of protein to carbohydrates. Try to keep a pretty close balance. So let's say the carbs are 20. I'd like to see about 15 or 14 grams of protein in that food. Also, when it comes to the carbohydrate fiber balance, make sure there's a 5-to-1 ratio. So for every 5 grams of carbohydrate, there is 1 gram of fiber. Okay. Make sure that, what did I write here? Make sure there are more than 5 grams of carbohydrates for every 1 gram of, I think I kind of wrote that out wrong. What I wanted to say there was for every 5 grams of carbohydrate, make sure there's 1 gram of fiber. So if my product has 15 grams of carbohydrates, I want to make sure I have at least 3 grams of fiber there. okay? Because that fiber is going to help slow down the rate at which that product turns to sugar in my bloodstream, okay? Also, too much sugar in the bloodstream all at once will cause an energy crash later, and it will cause you to eat foods that you probably shouldn't eat. It will also tend to cause cravings, and we don't want that because that is going to cause you to eat foods that you normally wouldn't eat. So the bottom line is everything you can do to keep that blood sugar balance is the best thing you can do for your eating habits and for fat loss as well, and for your health. All right, so sugar, let's go to sugar here. So I'm looking down over here at my big arrow. This product has 3 grams of sugar. So I love these facts about sugar. So let's look over here. So limit your sugar to no more than 16 spoons a day for women and 9 teaspoons a day. I want you to star something for me. This is another challenge for you, a little homework, is I want you to start paying attention to the sugar in the labels in your cupboards, okay? Or go to the store. If you don't have enough labels in your cupboards, then I love you. So if that's the case, then go to the store and start checking it out. Here's the thing. For every 4, this is what I want you to write down in star, okay? For every 4 grams of sugar on a label, you are consuming a physical 1 teaspoon of sugar. All right, so you could, I did this with my kids as we took ketchup. Ketchup has 1 tablespoon is the serving size, and 2/3 of that ketchup, so I can remember the numbers right now off the top of my head. Let's say there were, well, 2/3 of that ketchup were sugar. So that means it was basically it was 2 teaspoons out of that 1 tablespoon, because there are 3 teaspoons in 1 tablespoon. So I showed the kids 2 out of the 3 of the teaspoons available in this tablespoon of ketchup are sugar teaspoons. So that's pretty gross. I hope I just did not make that so confusing. But what you need to remember here is that for every 4 grams of sugar on your label, you are consuming 1 teaspoon of sugar. All right. So men, 9 teaspoons or less a day. Misty, you are hilarious. So let's do the math. Misty said that she had 14 grams of sugar in her yogurt. Yogurts are bad culprits. 14 grams. Oh gosh, now I have to do math. So we're going to divide that 14 grams. My next slide is a label just like this. We're going to divide that 14 grams of sugar in her yogurt by 4, okay, because we've got the 4 grams of sugar here. Dividing it into the 14 grams, that's about, what is that, 3.5 teaspoons. Thank you, Misty. 3.5 teaspoons of sugar in 1 8-ounce container of yogurt. So visualize, this is really motivating to me. Visualize you scooping out 3 teaspoons of sugar, 3.5 teaspoons of sugar, and putting in a little bowl. Would you really eat that, right? I did this with my daughter's health class. I've been teaching health classes at their school, and we took different foods. I actually went and I dumpster dived. I pulled a bunch of packages out of their garbage can in their classroom, and then I had a thing of sugar in a teaspoon, and we just figured out how many teaspoons of sugar were in those foods. We also went through a meal, your typical meal. Misty, what's a good one is Siggi. It's S-I-G-G-I. That's pretty good one. It's organic. It's whole fat milk for yogurts, and it only has about 8 grams. It's still 2 teaspoons. That's still a lot, but by comparison, and you have to remember that it has a fairly high protein. It was a Greek yogurt, so that protein also helps to balance out what's going on with those sugar carbs, okay? So higher protein will be a better bet. You're going to find the Siggies in the health food section, not in the regular yogurt section. So I've been doing this with the kids' classroom. What we did also is we took your typical breakfast, broke it down, the foods. We had like a Honey Nut Cheerios, skim milk, piece of a banana, and a glass of orange juice. It ended up having 14 grams of sugar in what you would typically think of as a standard healthy breakfast. So that is one of your homeworks, So I want you to go through and calculate how many teaspoons of sugar are in these products, or use your MyFitnessPal app or whatever your food app, and find out how much sugar would really be in these meals that I'm eating. So check out this Monster drink, 27 grams of sugar on the label. Right here, this is a Monster Energy drink. Now, Vic, if you're still here, Vic, let's pop up here. Most people drink the entire energy drink, but this is 2 servings per container, okay? So, 100 years of age, we consume 45 grams of sugar. Right. And now it's 765 every 5 days, right? It is 90, what is it? 90 pounds. I just taught this to the kids. I might even have it here on my notes. It is, I will look this up, but our sugar consumption has just, it's gone crazy. So looking at this one serving of this monster drink. Now, keep in mind, the serving size is 8 ounces. So this was a 16-ounce can apparently, because there's 2 servings per can. 13.5 teaspoons. When we do the math, we take the 27 grams divided by 4, we get it's 6.75 teaspoons of sugar per serving. But all these people drink the entire can, so that one can is 13.5 teaspoons. Oh, that is like a little bit heartbreaking right now. So that is, do not let your kids drink those drinks. Not good. Bad start. Okay, so just to give you a little idea, yes, wow, it is crazy. So that's eye-opening. And I honestly feel like if you physically go through the process of measuring out some teaspoons of sugar, it'll really sink in to what, how much sugar is around. And I know you guys that follow me know that I believe that knowledge inspires motivation, and that's what we're doing. That's the real monster. That's right, Vic. Okay, now let's talk about the new labels to come. Whoever splits a can of soda, right? All right, so let's talk about the new labels. So this is good stuff. We've got some good stuff coming up here. It's getting better, so that's hopeful. So these labels are coming out in 2018, and they are going to have bolder things here. So some of these, like serving size, look at this. The serving size is going to be bold. They are going to update the serving sizes. So I believe that this one is for an ice cream, okay? Instead of a half cup that it used to be, it's now going to be showing 2/3 of a cup, which we all still know is pretty small for ice cream, I've got to say. But still, it's coming along. The calorie intake is going to be larger. They're going to update the total daily value percentages based on current parameters, health parameters. So these things are good. This is coming along. Also, new added sugars, a new thing on the label will be added sugars. I wish I could zoom in on this for you. The bigger I got it, the blurrier it got. But you see down here where it says they are now going to add added sugars to the label, so that you will be able to see how many of these sugars are naturally occurring sugars and how much is actual, like corn syrup and all the different names for sugars. So this could be, let's just say, yeah, this is good stuff. And as I said, the FDA is going to require some companies to change their portion sizes. So that's awesome. So it's coming along. I'm really happy. This is weird, but this gives me joy. So I know, finally. So this is really good. I'm very happy to see this, because this is going to make people go, okay, so they've added a bunch of junk to this, and just that thought right there could potentially make you put it back on the shelf and walk away. So fruit naturally has sugar. So this is going to show us, well, how much of this is fruit sugars, how much of this is actual added sugars. Milk has sugars. So I believe, as I said, that this is an ice cream label. So in this case, of the 12 grams of sugar, I know this is small, 10 are added sugars. So the 2 grams that were naturally occurring sugars probably came from, absolutely, Lacey, we deserve to know what's added for sure. This is huge, and I'm actually very surprised this is happening because of how the FDA works. So this is really good. So probably in this ice cream, the 2 grams that are not listed at added sugars are probably coming from lactose, which is a milk sugar. So, there are naturally occurring sugars from milk and fruit. What else? I feel like I'm dropping one, but those are the 2 main natural occurring sugars. So this is great right here, what it's showing. It's also going to, these are going to change a little bit. You'll see on current labels. Well, I'm going to go through each one of these actually for you. Okay, so let's dip down here a little bit. So labels we got the grams of sugar. So you're going to really see how much sugar is truly added to yogurt, sauces, and other foods. So in those yogurts, you're going to get some that's going to come from the milk sugar, but it's going to show you how much corn syrup or artificial flavors or whatever are being added. Let's zip ahead. I kind of went over all this stuff. Wow, I'm sorry. I was a little sloppy on my slides here. I had some major website issues today, so that's why these aren't perfect. You're going to be able to see the percent of daily recommended intake for sugar and added sugar. Currently, those are not listed on labels, so that's good. So highlighting those numbers are going to let people know a little bit more to put your sugar intake into perspective. For example, we talked about 20% being high. Well, this right here is listed as high. So this particular product has 12 grams of sugar. It's 3 teaspoons. It is 20% of what they recommend as a daily intake. All right, so that's really good. The sad part is people don't know how to read this part, this percentage, but it's a big improvement. Okay, more vitamins. So now you see vitamin A and vitamin C over here on vitamins. What they did is they basically picked, the major vitamins that people were lacking and needed to kind of know about. We don't necessarily always need to know about vitamin K, although it's very important. They picked some of the major vitamins. But what they're seeing is that these days people are getting enough vitamin C, so they switched which vitamins show up on the labels. They were seeing that Americans weren't getting enough vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium. So they switched it. I think that's a very positive move as well, even if they have to shift it around as they see, how Americans are eating. So that's pretty cool. Okay. Vitamins A and C will not be required to go on the label because most Americans are getting enough, but some companies might choose to. Yeah. And so a new footnote here as well. I can't read the footnote. It's too small. But it's talking about the percent daily value. All right. So I have to say that these I feel like are very, very positive changes. So, I'm sorry, here, this is what the new footnote, the numbers are going to highlight the latest government recommendations in the 2015 through 2020 dietary guidelines. So that's what this little tiny footnote area is. So they're just updating things. And I feel like it's pretty positive, even though, we're still being kind of bamboozle in some areas. So we're going to make a little shift now. We're going to talk about some ingredients. I better scurry along so you guys have a life and you can get back to it. But I'm only halfway through here, so I better hurry up. All right, so I want to encourage you to buy the ingredients, not the marketing. We're going to talk a little bit about labels and marketing right now, but you have to remember that the labels and the packaging does not always depict what's really going on inside. All right, for example, this one. All right, well, here it says whole grain. I made this slide so it would do this cute little animation, but it's not working. So it says whole grain, so it's good for me, right? I hope you're chuckling and rolling your eyes right now, because they went to great lengths to do this huge check right here about the whole grain. It's the first ingredient, and that's funny because many people know that if it's in the first ingredient, it should be pretty good, right? Most of us kind of probably by now know that. So they wanted to make sure that we understood that whole grain is the first ingredient. They didn't even mention the whole chemical crap storm that's happening after the first ingredient, but as long as we're focused on that, we're good to go. Oh, and hey, check this out. While I'm feeding my kids this quality meal, my sarcastic side is coming out. While I'm feeding my kids this this quality made with whole grain first ingredient food, I get a box top for their school. So I should just buy it because I get credit for their school and it's super good for me. Sorry. I couldn't help myself there. Okay, so moving on. That's just a perfect example of why we don't want to buy the packaging, but sadly many Americans do because it's what we are conditioned to do. We watch these commercials and we're told these things. So let's go over some of the misleading label claims. These are some of the most common ones and what they actually mean. When you see light, for example, Progresso Light, when you see light products are processed to reduce either the calories or the fat. So the key word is processed. Oh my gosh, the toaster strudel is packed full of vitamins and minerals. Absolutely. Let me tell you a little something about that. We'll go into more on this, but the fortified, when you see milk that's fortified, cereals are fortified, that's because they had to strip it so far down in the processing process that it had nothing left, so they had to add them back in. Yet they put it on the label as though, yeah, this is fortified. But the whole point is it got to that point of having to be fortified because they stripped it. So think in terms of that. So light products are processed foods. I underline processed here for you because I want you to remember, even though it's a light product, it's been processed down to either reduce calories or fat. So they took the original food and created a little faux food out of it. Some products are just simply watered down. If you have a juice that's light juice, it's going to be watered down. or in soup's case too, if it's low sodium, it's just been watered down. So check carefully to see what's been added. Especially in the case of a low-fat food, you are often going to find sugar has been elevated greatly. Do you guys remember the Entenmann's and Snackwell's, the fat-free craze? Well, we went through this time, this is about in the 90s, and we went through this time of everything was fat-free, and we thought, yeah, I can eat whatever I want that's fat-free, but the problem is fat is what provides our food with flavor and mouthfeel, okay? So, and consistency. So when they strip the fat, they load it up with sugar to give it flavor, and then they add all these partially hydrogenated oils and different things to, maybe not in a low-fat food, but they add a lot of chemicals to create mouthfeel and consistency and texture. So you have to be thinking about that fact that when they put foods on the shelf, it has to look appealing. It has to feel good in your mouth. It has to sound good in your ear when you crunch it. I am not kidding you, but they test chips for the crunch factor. They tested what decibel of crunch brought the most satisfaction and dopamine response in the brain, your happy chemicals, to find out exactly the perfect amount of crunch that would keep you coming back for more. It's kind of sickening. So that's important to know, okay? Multigrain. Now this sounds super healthy, right? Multigrain, this sounds good. Right, so much effort to make people buy bad food. It's because it's about money. And I don't mean to get on my soapbox, but I can't help myself. But that's why you're here, because we're unveiling. That's why I'm calling it unboxed, because we got to get this stuff out of the box, okay? And make you little smarty pants. Okay, multigrain sounds very healthy, but basically it just means, well, thank you for the permission to soapbox. I appreciate that. Basically, it just means that there's more than one type of grain in the product. All right. And, okay, so let me preface all this with don't feel bad if you've been sucked in with this. This is why you're here. Okay, don't feel bad. I know you're probably like, oh my gosh, I feel so dumb, but that's exactly why you're here, because you're not dumb. I'm going to turn off my heater real quick. Okay, hang on a second. Toasty in here. I'm starting to shrivel up. So multi-grain, it means that there's just more than one type of grain in the product. However, these are most likely refined grains unless the product is marked as whole grain. So whole grain is good. It's just not great in the case of our Cocoa Puffs when it's backed up with a bunch of other junk, right? But a whole grain is a good thing. Multi-grain, it's not that it's bad, but you do have to know that it probably includes a mix of grains, and most likely those grains, unless listed as whole, have been processed and broken down. And when you take a food and you break it down, it's one step further from its real form and the goodness that it could have provided, okay? I'm going to talk a little bit more about that too. Oh my gosh, I should have broken this into 2 webinars. Okay, natural does not look at this package. This is all natural. Have you guys seen Lay's potato chips where they've got the shiny bright yellow bag and then they have the bag that's this color? It's like a little more muted. It's not a shiny packaging. It's like a natural packaging. And then here it says all natural on the label. Oh, I'm so glad, Lacey. Oh, I'm so glad to that you are getting it. You're pretty darn conscientious anyway, so I'm really glad that that is helping even you, because I know you check out your stuff. So natural does not necessarily mean that the product resembles anything natural. Sorry, I'm sorry for my sarcasm. It's just so crazy. Okay, it simply means that at some point, I missed that one. At some point, the manufacturer had I think that was about whole grain. So I think I've got another slide on that in a minute here. It simply means that at some point, listen closely, at some point, the manufacturer had a natural food to work with, okay? And then did whatever they wanted with it, all right? So it could be this potato chip is all natural because a potato was a natural food. And then they sliced it, and then, oh, like in the case of a Pringles, then they turned it into powder, and then they pushed it into a mold, and then they ran it down a factory, and then they added salt and all this other stuff, right? So a Pringle is a really good example of that, because it was a potato, and then they obliterated it and made another food out of it, yet they can still label it with, hello, Neilani, it's good to have you. I don't know that we've met, Neilani. It's good to have you here. So you have to keep in mind that natural means it came from a food that either was on the ground with eyeballs or growing out of the ground. But it doesn't mean that you are consuming it in that natural state, all right? So again, just want to remind you, sorry, my labels were sloppy here. Don't buy the ingredients. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I did bad here. Don't buy the marketing, buy the ingredients. Let's change that right now so I don't confuse you. Buy the ingredients, not the marketing. I apologize, but like I said, I was having website issues right up until 5 minutes before we started the webinar because I was going to send you guys over to my website later, but that's not happening. Okay. Misleading label claims. I'm going to move through kind of quickly because I don't want to take up your entire day. Organic. All right. This label says very little about whether the product is healthy or not. Remember, you can get organic sugar and it's still sugar. Okay. So don't be fooled by organic Oreos. They're still Oreos. They're still processed food. All right. So just remember that. No sugar added. So some products are, excuse me, I'm going to drink really quick. Sorry about that. Some products are naturally high in sugar, like those fruit snacks, they're fruit sugars. So keeping in mind that that just means they don't, when they say no added sugar, it still could be high in sugar, fruit sugars, which still turn to sugar in your bloodstream, which still can be turned into fat later. So keep that in mind. It just means that no added sugars have been added. Okay. You could also find that unhealthy sugar substitutes may have been added. So keeping that in mind, that's why learning the ingredients list is important. Low calorie. All right. So in order to market something as low calorie, it has to contain 1/3 fewer calories than that same brand's original product. So an Oreo and a low fat Oreo. It just means that they probably added in more sugar. Low calorie. I apologize. We're talking low calorie. So they changed some things around. They possibly made the serving size smaller. Look into that so that they could put it was lower calorie. So a third, is there a ton of background noise? Oh, maybe it's my hair. Sorry. Let's try that. Let's see if that helps. Thank you, Neilani. You might also, because I haven't had anybody say that yet, so you might check your headphones. Someone's talking. Okay, so can't hear it? Okay. So Neilani, you might check, maybe reset your headphones or something if you're using headphones, because I'm in a vault right now in my massage room. It's good now? Okay, maybe it was my hair, honey. I'm sorry about that. Let me keep my hair on the other side. I have an afro. So 1/3, okay, so that same brand. Now, keep in mind that, sweetie, thank you, that's so nice. So one brand's low calorie version may contain similar calories as the original of another product. So just don't get sucked in with the labeling. That's really why can you get a copy of the slides? Yeah, we could probably do that. Let me get to that a little bit later. This is going to live forever on my membership site, but maybe there are definitely some things I could make copies for you guys to be able to absorb. Okay, so again, this all comes around to say, I know this is a lot of information, but it all comes around to say is balance these things out with what's going on inside the package and what's going on with the nutrition label, okay? Low fat. I'm going to zip through these here because there's really good stuff I want to get to. Can you believe it? More good stuff. All right, low fat. This label almost always means that fat has been reduced at the cost of adding more sugar. We talked about that, right? So really look into that and look at the sugar content. So low carbohydrate. So low carb diets have been linked with improved health and fat loss. And that is so true. But you have to keep in mind that when your body is eating processed foods, it doesn't really know what to do with those foods. Even if it's low carb, your body is still like, what in the world is this? Because it's been hacked down so much to reduce carbs and do all this stuff. It's still a processed food. So your body is kind of like, okay, what is this? That's why I say go with the JERF diet, the just eat real food, because your body knows exactly what to do with those foods that came out of the ground. It literally has to process through these processed foods. It has to process through like an intruder and say, okay, wait, let me check all this out. Let me see, what is that thing? What is that thing? I don't even know what that is. That used to be something good, but now I don't even know what to do with it. So it takes some time and it's not necessarily conducive to good health at all. Or metabolism, okay? It's not going to do much good for your metabolism if that's your goal. Made with whole grain. Okay, so I think this was Lacey's question. All right. So keep in mind, again, you need to check the ingredients list. If it says made with whole grain on the front, it might have some little negotiable amount. If whole grain is not listed in the first 3 ingredients of the product, then it's probably very little, but they're allowed to put it on the label because it is somewhere in there. It could be way down toward the bottom. So when you're reading ingredients lists, anything listed at the beginning of the ingredients list, I have more on this in a minute, I hope. I hope I included that slide. Everything at the beginning of the list is in higher quantities in that product. As you get further down the list, it's less and less. So if you're finding whole grain way down the list, that means that there's probably not a whole lot. If sugar is in the first 3 ingredients, there's a lot of sugar in that product. Okay. So keeping that in mind, Lindsay, I hope that answered your question about whole grain. So basically, yes, they can put whole grain on the package, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's all whole grain. All right. And this is the one where Miss Lady, a couple more claims. Oh gosh, we got a lot here. Zero trans fats. Now, as we said before, it can be listed as zero trans fats on a label, like on the front of the package, a cute little stamp that says zero trans fats. However, that actually means that there's less than 0.5 grams of trans fats per serving. So if the serving size is very small and you're taking 3 times the serving size, you're getting potentially 1.5 grams of trans fats. And over the course of a day, and a week, and a month, this can add up. So keep that in mind. I know we talked about that earlier. All right, fortified and enriched. We talked about this. I was telling you basically that means that nutrients have been added, but mainly because nutrients have been stripped from the whole real food it used to be. So keep in mind that if nutrients had to be added, it's probably not a good bet. Just go to the whole real food and you're better off. This is one of my favorites, gluten-free. When the gluten-free craze came around, and I'm not bashing the gluten-free craze because that could be a whole other webinar. It is good to be gluten-free. Gluten is difficult for many people's body, whether you actually physically show it or not. I believe that Misty is gluten-free. Is that right, Misty? It can wreak havoc on people's body. And sometimes we don't see it in the way, we don't have a gut ache and we don't have like diarrhea and all this, but we have a lot of other symptoms that we are not recognizing as connected with gluten. However, gluten-free products do not always equal health because I'm gluten sensitive. Okay, causes bloat. Okay, that's because your body is like, what is this? And I would love to do a whole other inflammation. Exactly. I'd love to do a whole other webinar on that so we can dig into that a little bit. We will talk about that a little bit later too. But so you have to keep in mind, gluten-free simply means that product does not contain wheat, spelt, rye, or barley. All right. But the problem is that many of the substitutes they use for wheat, spelt, rye, or barley are high glycemic foods. They're rice, tapioca starch, potato starch, which means these turn to sugar in your bloodstream quickly. And for overall health, not such a great thing. They're also highly processed. All right. So, and oftentimes you're going to find unhealthy fats and sugar. So just because it says gluten-free, what I love is when like Chex cereal, gluten-free is always, well, Chex is made out of corn. Corn never had gluten. So it's kind of funny where they jump on the bandwagon just because it's that craze that we're used to seeing. Okay. So just keep in mind that you need to check what's inside the package when you see it says gluten-free on there. Okay. So, what are the good grains to want? So you mean looking in gluten-free foods? Is that your question? When you're looking for gluten-free foods, just answer me that. Yes. Okay. So that's a really good question. When you're looking at gluten-free foods, I would go with foods that are okay. And the reason I'm saying this is because if fat loss is your goal, you want to look for almond flour or coconut flour. When it comes to the substitutes, when you get into the rice, the tapioca, and the potato starches, those again are broken down, things are added to them, but they also, if you ate tapioca, if you ate rice, if you ate potato, those things are going to shoot your blood sugar up high. Coconut flour and almond flour have good healthy fats in them that will help to keep your blood sugar balanced. They're going to give you those healthy fats, and they haven't added a bunch of things to them, starches and things like that. Okay. So that's what I usually look for when I'm looking for those. Oh, quinoa flour is probably a fairly decent one too, because sometimes they'll use quinoa. That's got some protein in it. A little off in flavor sometimes, but it's a good substitute. All right, fruit flavored. Many processed foods have a name that refers to a natural flavor, such as strawberry yogurt. However, there may not be any fruit at all. So just chemicals that are designed to taste like fruit. So those blueberries in your muffins, those ain't blueberries. Those are actually polypropylene glycol. That's like a liquid. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I made a mess of this label here. Sorry, we're jumping over here. So keep in mind that if it's supposed to be looking like, what Oh, I'm so sorry about my labels here. I just got distracted this afternoon. I had an eye doctor appointment today, and it took way longer than I thought. So because I'm old now and have to have glasses. Yeah, it's so mean to say it's strawberry flavor and has chemicals, right? So these are sugar alcohols that they use, and then they have artificial flavor. So there's really no strawberry. It's usually a sugar. Sometimes there might be, but usually it's a sugar alcohol and then artificial flavors to give it the hint of strawberry goodness. Okay. All right. So what's hiding behind your food label? This is what's really important, is what's going on behind it. And I'm going to give you some resources that are going to be super helpful. So I'm just going to read my slide here so I don't. Oh, you're sweet. That's cute. Well, I'm going to give you some great documents or some documentaries that are going to really open your eyes. All right, so food policy has both political and economic factors. So you have to keep that in mind. It's not just about keeping us informed about what's in the package. There's money and politics behind it, and it runs huge. Like the money part of it is kind of sickening, I have to say. And I don't mean to be discouraging with that, but that's why you're here to learn, so that you can understand why eating whole real food is the best choice. All right, so the nutrition facts label that we went over way at the beginning helps you determine the amount of calories and nutrients and all that stuff. And it's good. It's good information to let you know kind of roughly what's going on. Ooh, I need to look at that one. Sugar, salt, fat. I'm writing that down. I haven't heard of that. Is that a book, Lacey? Okay, usually 15 nutrients are shown in those labels, but there's a lot more going on in the label as well. Okay, I'll look for that, Lacey. So I want to tell you guys about these documentaries. They're awesome. They're old, but awesome. All right, so I want you guys to jot these down, put a star by it. That's your homework. You guys have lots of homework. I kept you for like 2 hours now and then all this homework. So these two documentaries, you can probably find these in either your library or your grocery store in the old movie section. So Food Inc. Oh, Netflix, right. You can find these on Netflix. I forgot about that. And Corn King. These are going to teach you about what goes on behind your label. I love this picture of the cow with a label. It's so apropos. There's plenty more, but these were two that I really felt like were really good ones, especially Food Inc. They go really deeply into what happens with the labeling and the laws and the FDA and the money and who's behind the money. I believe it's the King Corn one that goes into, oops, I got the name backward here, but it's King Corn, goes into Monsanto. And that is a whole other webinar. Okay, so jot those down and definitely check those out, because that will do so much to improve your awareness of what goes on behind there. Okay. All right, other FDA labeling terms. Fat-free. I'm going to zip through these. Fat-free just basically means that, if you guys can print screen these too on your computers, then try that too if you are looking for like, what is it? Or take your phone and take a picture of the screens here if there's stuff that you want to remember. Fat-free, less than half a gram of total fat for a given reference amount. So in order to put fat-free on the label, there's still fat in it, but that's what they need to do. Saturated fat-free means that there's less than half a gram of saturated fat for any given reference amount, okay? And there has to be no more than half a gram of trans fatty acids, just like we were looking at before. In order for something to be listed as low fat, it has to have 3 grams or less of total fat. And what I mean by for given reference amount, that means for serving size, okay? To be listed as a percent fat-free, whatever percent that is, 100% fat-free claim can only be made on foods that meet the criteria for fat-free, which this fat-free here, which basically means that it has to have at least less than half a gram of fat. Low saturated fat, 1 gram or less of saturated fat per serving size, and not more than 15% of calories from saturated fat. So these are, pretty legit. They're not too deceiving. But again, it's based on the serving size. So if there's half a gram of fat and you're eating 2 servings, you're going to get a gram of fat. All right, calorie-free, less than 5 calories, which is funny. Calorie-free, but there's still 4 calories in it. Well, whatever. I mean, it's just kind of funny where they push the lines, okay? Low calorie, no more than 40 calories. So, if you truly are counting every single calorie, these things could make a difference. Low cholesterol means that it has 20 or less than 20 milligrams of cholesterol, okay? And 2 grams or less of saturated fat per serving. because that fat's going to have the cholesterol in it. Cholesterol free means that it has less than 2 milligrams of cholesterol. So just know that these are okay, but if you're really getting down to the wire and you're really like counting these macro and micronutrients for health purposes, then you really want to look at the labels and make sure, because it's not exactly accurate. You see there's some fudge factor here, okay? Ingredients list. Okay, this is, we are getting to this point here where we're talking about this part of your label. I'm going to go backwards a little bit, but we're going to go to this part where they actually are listing the ingredients. So it's important to know that product ingredients are listed by quantity from highest to lowest amount. All right, so the first ingredient listed shows up the most in that package. A good rule of thumb is to scan the first 3 ingredients and get a gist of what you're eating, because that's the largest part of what you're eating. Sometimes if I find a weird thing at the very end, like canola oil, not something I really want really high in the list, but if there's a little teeny bit at the end, I'm not usually too worried about it if everything else looks pretty good. So looking at the first 3 to 5 ingredients will give you a good indication of what's going on inside the package. So if the first 3 ingredients include refined grains, some sort of sugar, which I'm going to show you a list of sugars, or hydrogenated oils in the first 3 ingredients, and you can be pretty sure you should just put it back and keep walking. Okay. So choose items that have whole real foods in them, like peas and meat and things like that. Okay. And another good rule of thumb is if the ingredients list is longer than 2 to 3 lines, there's a lot of processing going on there. Okay. So keep that in mind. And I know that that rules out a lot of processed foods, but that's good, right? So again, jerf diet. I should have put jerf slides in here. I think I'll fix this. Every other slide, I'll just put the word jerf as a reminder. Okay, so look at these labels. I just want you, as I'm talking, I just want you kind of looking at some of the stuff on these labels. I didn't go into all of these, but I would love to do a webinar on a lot of these, what some of these weird things are. But the point is that really, if you see a lot of these weird things, look at some of these weird names. Now, again, some of these are just other names for vitamins. For example, pyroxidine hydrochloride, that's vitamin B6. So it looks scary, but we don't really need to worry about it. But product ingredients, I'm sorry, I repeated this. The first ingredient is, I don't know what this label was for, but the first ingredients here is sugar. So the first ingredients, what you're going to find the most of. Yeah, list of sugars. Yes, it is good. Okay, so look at this ingredient, whatever this is. Okay, but we have sugar, first ingredient. Then we have rice flour. I should try to guess what it is. Then we have rice flour. Rice flour turns to sugar very quickly in your bloodstream, just like rice does. Cornstarch, soy flour, baking. So what is that? I mean, there's like nothing. What is that? What is that? Sorry, it's not even like a food. It's just a sugar thing. I don't know a marshmallow? Is it a marshmallow? It could be. It very well could be, actually, when you think about what all this stuff is. A lot of these things are thickeners. Oh, but look, it's gluten-free. Look at that. So it must be healthy. Oh, and there's natural flavors in there from like the mallow root. But you could be very right. That could be, yeah, interesting, isn't it? All right, so basically, I'm sorry, I duplicated these slides a little bit here, but scan the first 3 ingredients and check that out. Now, this label here, there's just like so much going on in this label. BHT, that's and so this label actually, at least it tells you what is going on. This is a preservative, so, you know, not so great. So it does tell you a lot of these things are added minerals and vitamins, but gosh, just looking at that, it's like, yeah, I don't think so. So milled corn, turns to sugar quickly in your bloodstream. Sugar, it's sugar. Corn syrup, it's sugar. Molasses, it's sugar. So, okay, so, and then we've got these partially hydrogenated oils that we talked about, a bunch of them, okay? I don't know what that product is either. I wish I just grabbed these off of Google just to give you some visuals on those labels, but I wish I knew. It would be fun to dissect some more of those things. All right, ingredients list. Again, oh, now look, I found this was Amy's organic vegetable barley soup. I, for example, love Amy's because you can, right, I wouldn't worry as much about molasses either. Look at this. You can recognize everything here. Gosh, I kept duplicating my slides here. Sorry about that. We have onions. I know what water is. I know what onions are. Do you guys know what barley is? That's good. I've got carrots in my garden. We got tomatoes. I mean, all of this stuff, everything in here is recognizable. Now, this is a perfect example of where I'd be like, oh, well, safflower oil is not the best. Oh, but look, it's organic, it's high oleic, it's either safflower or sunflower, and look, it's at the very bottom of the list. Oh, but it contains gluten, it must be bad for me. No, I'm just kidding. But in this case, if I see a canola oil, safflower oil, I'm like, you know what? All of this stuff is ingredient. It's real food. And I'll tell you what, Amy's organic vegetables, soups, they taste good. They taste like real food because it basically is real food. And yes, it's been processed and heated, but there's just an example for you. Okay, let's get into this stuff. This stuff is good. Okay, how organic is it? So we're going to talk about some of these labels that are popping up lately. So USDA regulated labeling. So for organic, USDA organic, the seal is found on all food products that meet the National Organic Program, that's the NOP, regulations to be called 100% organic. And I'll tell you what, it costs companies a lot of money to hold this label. So when you see this label, you can honestly know that if that company was just trying to, and they get tested all the time, people are not going to put the kind of money it takes. There's what's the Oregon TILF label as well, very expensive for companies to get those on. If a company is just being cheesy and not really putting quality behind their foods, they're not going to have that label most likely, because they might have a label like this that says something like made with some organic ingredients. So I'll explain that to you now. So according to the Organic Foods Production Act and the NOP, a product can be labeled 100% organic if it contains only organic ingredients, just like that Amy's. Amy's had everything organic, so she can say that it's organic because everything in it has to be labeled organic. All right. So the label with just says when it says, so what I'm saying, in order to have this label or 100% organic label, it has to have 100% organic products. If the label simply says organic, now there could be a few things in there. 5% can be made of non-organic products. All right. Still pretty decent though, but kind of depends on what those products are and how heavily pesticide laden those products tend to be. Now, if a product is if a food product is made up of at least 70% organic ingredients, it can be labeled as made with organic ingredients. So we're going further down the line here. Okay. So if it says 100% organic, you know everything in that package was made with organic foods. And again, just because it says organic does not mean it's healthy or does not mean it's a fat loss food, but it's a good start, okay? Because at least you're not getting all of those chemicals and things. Okay, let's talk about GMO. I could go so deep on this, but I'm going to try to stick with just the label part of it, and we'll talk about them in another webinar. So in genetic modification, what that means is basically they tweaked a seed to get out of it what they wanted. So they mixed the genes, or they removed one or more genes from the DNA of another organism and then combine them with the DNA of the plant they want to alter. Okay, and why would they alter these plants? One of the reasons, I'm going to try to keep it brief. One of the reasons, let's say wheat. Wheat grows very tall typically. When they create this little frankenseed to make, so when wheat grows tall, it breaks easily. And so then they lose part of their crop. And then we have bugs that get it, and we have mold that gets it. So what they do is they make a little frankenseed that causes the wheat to grow shorter, so it's sturdier, so it survives. It also is, there are inside that seed of what are called Bt toxins that create like a little toxin to bugs. And in fact, the Bt toxin causes bugs' tummies to blow up. And so the bug has a tiny mouth and a tiny tummy, and it's eating a tiny bite. But we eat so much. When you think about how much wheat we eat, cannot be good for us. So there's yes, humans can eat the frankenseed food, but it is not good for us. So, because it's causing inflammation in our body. So these little Bt toxins, and it's like letter B, letter T down here. More Monsanto, absolutely. These were designed to kill the bugs that ate them. Okay, so these GMO seeds can also be created. Exactly, if it's bad for little creatures, it's bad for big creatures too. I love that verbiage. Plus, we're eating so much more than the little creatures too. And so we're getting it in all these different food products that we're eating. So it's designed to withstand mold. These GMO products can be designed to withstand pesticides such as Roundup, which is made by the company Monsanto, which also creates GMO seeds to withstand their own pesticides. Soapbox. Okay. So that is very long and involved, and that goes into the money and the FDA and the whole thing. You really have to watch that Food Inc. video to really get the hang of this. So these are all the hazards. I mean, some of the hazards. Okay. So these are things. The GMO corn and Roundup herbicide causes tumors and organ damage. These studies were done on animals. So they suffered stomach inflammation and heavier uteri, so heavier uteruses. Potatoes caused damage to mice intestines. Corn toxins found in the blood of pregnant women, which means it's in the blood of their little babies. Babies these days are born with so many toxins and leads and chemicals. It's sad. All right. So crops that are currently approved to GMO in the U.S. Take a little look at this or take a screenshot. These are currently approved. Hopefully this will come along when we get, anytime you see this label, you're good to go. This label here is what means that it does not contain any faux little franken seeds. Okay. I honestly do not know what an innate potato is. I think but I'll tell you what, my husband works for a food manufacturing, or not, he works for a company, yeah, he does, a food manufacturing company, and they use their trucks to haul potatoes. I saw a picture of you, Misty, in a potato place the other day. And you might know this, you might know even more than I do, but what he was saying is that when they transport potatoes, and Misty works in the trucking industry, so I'm sure she knows about this. When they transport potatoes, they have to completely sanitize the inside of the truck, and they have to put those potatoes in store. Oh, I'd like to ask Julie. They'd have to put those potatoes in storage for a super long amount of time to let them kind of off gas what they have to spray potatoes with. So I urge you. Oh, pure. Okay. That kind of makes sense. I don't know what a non-pure potato is though, but maybe like a Franken potato. I don't know. But basically, potatoes are really sprayed. I really encourage you to buy organic potatoes or grow your own. Okay. Put them to sleep. What does that mean? Was that so they don't sprout? That's possibly. And they probably are treated with something to cause them not to sprout. So I should dig a little further and really know my stuff. To be honest, that's all I know. But oh, Misty, oh my gosh, you guys are killing me with these comments. These are interesting. The storage place you were standing in might have needed a gas mask, Misty. Yeah, I should dig into that, Lacey, a little more, because I just know this little superficial. Oh, interesting. So Misty says 10 months they go into storage, and I'm sure they are preserved. Because otherwise, if you take a potato out of your garden, my kids just dug potatoes their school went to a potato farm and dug potatoes. Funny little field trip. But if I left them in my pantry, they're going to sprout in a short period of time, unless I spray them with some like urethane or something. I don't know. Interesting. Okay, so let's talk to the butcher. All right, when it comes to your beef, these are some labels to look at. So USD process verified, this shield, again, people have to pay money companies have to pay a good amount of money to put these labels on their product. So they also get, investigated as well to make sure that they are living by these standards. So this is a good thing that we have these labelings. Although some, the other labels I showed you about all natural and all those are loose. These kinds of labels tend to be a little more rigid and stringent. So, okay, so USD process verified verifies that the animals were raised on a lifetime diet of 100% grass and forage, like the chickens in my backyard. I have my window closed, but if it was open, you could probably hear my chickens caterwauling right now. Chicken walling. All right. This one, and I don't see these very often. I usually find these labels in my health food store. Not super often are you going to find them in your regular grocery store. But this one here, the Food Alliance certified with the grass-fed label, verifies that the animals were raised on a lifetime diet of 100% grass and forage. And so all of these build upon each other. And the meats with this symbol are certified for not using hormones and antibiotics. All right. So we're grading up. We're stepping up here. Now this one, American grass-fed. All the same things. Verifies animals were raised on a lifetime of 100% grass and forage without confinement or antibiotics or hormones. So this one means that they were never even confined. This one could be confined, yet still not fed antibiotics or hormones and fed grass feed. This one could mean that they were confined, but this one adds the free roaming factor to it. So this would be like the chickens in the backyard. Okay. So that's what those guys mean. Just a little bit on grass-fed meat. I don't want to go too much into nutrition because we're talking more about labels, but grass-fed cattle, the reason for these things is that so much more nutrient. They have fat-burning nutrients and higher levels of health-boosting nutrients. So the fat-burning nutrients is conjugated linoleic acid. You're only going to find this in grass-fed meats. This is a fat metabolizing amino acid and cancer fighting. So that is good. They also contain omega-3s, more omega-3s, which fight inflammation, heart disease, great for focus. They also have lower amounts of omega-6. So omega-6 is what causes inflammation in the body when not kept in balance with the omega-3s. So processed oils have omega-6s. They cause inflammation. Grains, the grains that are fed to these animals. Now you'll also sometimes find grass-fed beef that was grain finished, which meant for the last couple of months it was fed on grain, I believe, to fatten it up. All right, so these grass-fed animals are lower in saturated fats as well. So grass-fed, yes, it's more expensive, but definitely a lot of health benefits. You have to think about this. You are what you ate, and you are what your cells absorb. So that's really important to remember. And I know people are like, oh, eating healthy is so expensive, but you know, it just gets to a point where you get to a point and you say, this is important enough to me to spend the extra money and get rid of the newspaper and TV and whatever, whatever else. My husband's sad about that, but we eat well. Okay. More about your chicken. So natural, this is important. Natural is deceiving. It guarantees that there are no artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives, and the bird has been minimally processed. However, the law allows for 12% water absorption, and you're paying for that. So 12%, that's a lot. So you're paying for added water. When you see those packages and they're like kind of puffed up, they're adding water to it to make it look bigger. So free range, USDA states that these chickens require only 5 minutes. Now, free range sounds awesome, but they are only required to have 5 minutes of open air access per day. So sad. This still can mean that they lived in a concrete pen for most of their life. 5 minutes. That ain't nothing. Hormone free. It verifies that the animals are raised on a lifetime diet of 100% grass and forage without confinement, antibiotics, or hormones. So they weren't confined. So they were running around the yard. So I really encourage you, no matter where you live, sometimes it's easier than others, to find a really good source of meat for yourself. And you might have to do some digging. Go to your health food store and ask who raises meat around here. Find the guy that raises it in his little farm. And you can find it. It's just a little harder, and you might have to drive, and you might have to buy large amounts so that you can freeze it, so that you don't have to go so often. Okay. So label losers to watch for. Ammonium sulfate. I'm going to zip through these two. There's so many labels. Ammonium sulfate, mostly commonly used as a fertilizer. All right. But you find this in your food. It's a dough conditioner that gives bread its healthy, unquote, in quotes, brown color. This can cause mouth ulcers, nausea, kidney, and liver problems. All right. We see this a lot. So look for these foods on these items. We won't call them foods on your labels. Caramel coloring, the brown coloring agent usually found in breads, pre-cooked meats, chocolate beer, cola, soy, and Worcestershire sauces that contains contaminants. Oh, let's see if I can pronounce this one. Of 2-methyl-limidisol. I don't know if I did good. These things, and then 4-methyl-limidisol. I'm not pronouncing that properly. But these can cause liver, lung, and thyroid cancers. Benzoates. We see a lot of benzoates. And good point. County agriculture agent may have a list of farms that sells to the public. Also, we go to our county fair, and the 4-H kids will, they auction off their food. At least that animal ran around in a nice little child's barn, right? Maybe, it's hard to tell what it was fed. However, at least it ran around in the sunshine. Sometimes our local grocery store will buy those animals and sell them, and they label them 4-H. I love to snatch those up and freeze them. So at the bottom of this slide, benzoates. These you're going to see all over the place. So sodium benzoate and potassium benzoate. These are preservatives that extend the shelf life, and usually they're used in acidic foods like fruit juices and sodas. These cause allergic reactions, hives, and asthma. A little more. Carrageenan. You're going to see carrageenan often in your milk beverages like coconut, almond milk. There was one brand called, we just started using it recently. It's called Calify, I believe, like the first part of California. And they don't have carrageenan in theirs. It's in this kind of cool curvy shaped bottle in the health food section, in the chilled section, if you're looking for it. That is, carrageenan is a thickening agent. Remember I talked about making a food mouth friendly? That's what carrageenan can be used for. So it's a stabilizer, it's emulsifying, so it connects, gels things up. It's found in milk beverages like almond and soy milk. You'll also see it in deli meats and pizza crusts. It happens to also be used to de-ice airplanes, but whatever. So yeah, there's that. It can cause ulcerations and definitely gastrointestinal issues. All right. So guar gum, you see this in ice cream all the time. It's an emulsifier or a thickener. You'll find it in soups, cottage cheeses sometimes, and frozen desserts. So it's a thickener. It's similar to carrageenan. And it can reduce the absorption of some nutrients. So lycopene is what is found in tomatoes, lutein and beta carotene, that is vitamin A. So it's going to minimize your ability to absorb those nutrients. Sodium nitrate. This is a faux ingredient that brightens preservatives in bacon and deli meats. So it's making the food look good. So sodium nitrate is allowed to contain residual heavy metals such as arsenic and lead. So yeah, so this is a problem. This also can cause allergic reaction, hives, and asthma, and a whole lot more. So really watch the nitrates and the nitrites. So you can find Applegate Farms is one company that usually provides like bacon and deli meat type foods that doesn't have nitrates and nitrates. All right, this is big. I'm going to have to make a PDF of this for y'all. Oh, Boar's Head. Is that a brand? Boar's Head? Huh. I'm going to make a list for you guys of this because there's no way you're going to remember all this. Okay, that's good to know. Boar's Head. I'll have to look for that. And again, I would say really go to the health food section because you're going to find some of these things in the health food section, but not usually your typical meat and deli section in the grocery store. Okay, these are all different types of sugars right here. I have 3 slides of these, and that should make your heart skip a beat. Beet sugar, brown sugar, buttered sugar, cane sugar, castor sugar, coconut sugar, date sugar, golden sugar, invert sugar, muscovado sugar, organic raw sugar, raspadura sugar, I've never even seen, evaporated cane juice, convection sugar, that's powdered sugar, right? Then we have these as added sugars, all right? So these are the things that are considered added sugars that we're going to start seeing on labels. Barley malt, molasses, cane juice, crystals, lactose, corn sweetener, crystalline fructose, dextrin, malt powder, ethyl maltol, fructose, fruit juice concentrate, galactose, glucose, disaccharides, maltodextrins, maltose. Really? My mouth is tired. Syrups that are sugars. Carob syrup, golden syrup, fructose, high fructose corn syrup, honey, agave nectar, not good. It's very refined. I just want to clear that up right now. Everyone's like, but what about agave? No. Malt syrup, maple syrup. Now we use maple syrup in our home as a sweetener at times. You don't need much, but it's less refined than a lot of these other syrups. Oat syrup, rice bran syrup, rice syrup, and that's not even all of them, but that's a lot of them. So you also want to look for the sugar alcohols. Any of the sugars that end in ITOL, like sorbitol, mannitol, xylitol, erythritol, these are sugar alcohols. Those are the ones that they will mix. It's like a liquid sugar that they'll mix with artificial colors and flavors to make the faux blueberry in your food. Okay, so look for those. All right. I think we got it. So that was a lot. In the future, I will prevent these webinars from being this long, but I didn't know how to break this down into 2 groups. It was just so important stuff. So, so I want to just have you go back and the things that you starred, I want you to do. Oh, good, Lacey. I want you to do these things as homework. Okay. And so let me see if I can recap what those were. I want you to be a sugar sleuth. I want you to go through your labels and I want you to just start really getting familiar with them. I want you to start measuring out the sugar amounts in grams. I want you to start, looking for good sources of meats that you can find, and take baby steps into this. Don't feel like you have to hack this off all the way. Take one thing that's a concern to you and fix that. Find a good source, find a good go-to food. Oh, I meant to give you a good resource. It's called Rich Food, Poor Food. And I'm so sorry I did not include that, but it is called, let me go to the chat, see if I can add that in the chat stream here. It is called Rich Food, Poor Food. This is by Kelton Nutrition. Oops, I'm going to put this in the comments here. Great, awesome. I'm not even going to say great. It's an awesome resource for your food library. Get the book, that's homework as well, because it breaks all of this stuff down and really makes you very privy to what's going on in the nation. I'm also going to put a couple other links for you guys here. Oh gosh, I have all these little links here. Okay, so this link here, those of you that don't know, doing a little free challenge. I'm going to give you a link to the free challenge while you're here in case you guys don't know about it. So this is the link for the Candy Bowl Crusher that starts on Friday. And what the whole thing with Candy Bowl Crusher is about is I want to keep you focused on positive health habits during the next about 2 weeks before we hit Halloween, because I see it all the time. Just trust me, I see it all the time. People start sliding off. They get in the gym in September and October, they do awesome, and then they start sliding because their bad sugary habits start creeping in. As you see, all these different names of sugar we have here, 3 slides of them. And then it starts really wreaking havoc, and then they start craving more, and then they get into Thanksgiving. And I really want you guys to get through the Halloween as best as possible so that we can then attack the Thanksgiving holiday and then get through Christmas. I have a plan for all of those. But for now, I want you to join the free challenge just to get one daily mini challenge in your inbox. We'll go through it in the private Facebook group, which I will give a link to. If you guys are not part of the Facebook group, I share mini challenges. Where is it? Let's see. I share mini challenges there every week, lots of every day, a new post every day, something to just start keeping you mindful about your choices. And some of them you might not be ready for, and other ones you might. So there's the link to the Facebook group. Join that if you have not joined it. That is a free group. I also have the Trainer on Tap membership site, which I go into a lot more depth on things in the Trainer on Tap membership site. If you're interested in that, you can definitely check that out on my website. It's like I said, I'm having struggles with my website right now. Hopefully by the time we're done with this, it'll be fixed, but I'll send you over there. Just in case, there's a lot of great articles over there. You might want to go. Sorry, I have to type. Sorry, I have to just type. I can't think here. The website has lots of great articles for you. All right, that's a link to the membership site if you want information about what that involves. But I also have a program coming up I would love to offer you guys a discount to. You guys may have heard me talking about this one before, and I decided to run another round of this starting October 21st, which is not this coming Friday, but the following Friday, because this puts us, if you need extra help and accountability, making sure you do not fly through the slippery slope that is Halloween through Thanksgiving through Christmas. This program will be perfect. And I timed it October 21st to run through November 21st. That way, you're going to have the mindset tools that you need. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to get you on track before the craziness of the holiday begins. You most likely will lose weight and gain energy during this program, but that's not my main focus. The main focus with this program, it's called the 28-Day Real Health Reset. It's to reset your mind frame about food and how you approach food, and to gain that whole perspective of nourishing your body, not eating according to a label or eating according to the calories in and calories out. So it's making you mindful of how you eat. There's